Hey, welcome back. Today, let's talk about something that can save you thousands of dollars and years of frustration if you understand it early. Homesteading looks simple from the outside, but a few common mistakes can derail your entire plan before you even start. After working with land investments and rural properties for over a decade, I've learned the most expensive mistakes are the quiet ones. Here's what I check before ever putting a dollar into this. When you're investing in a homestead, whether it's your first piece of land or a long-term rural property, the mistakes you avoid up front matter just as much as the money you put in. Today we'll talk about the core factors I check before committing to any homestead-style investment, because getting these wrong can slow you down for years. After more than a decade working with land buyers, investors, and rural property owners, I've seen these steps save people thousands of dollars and a great deal of stress. We're going to walk through each factor I personally review before making a move. Let's break it down step by step. Verify local zoning first. Before I look at soil, water, or buildings, I always start with zoning. You'll want to confirm that the land is truly unrestricted, or at least permissive enough for your goals. One regulation can shut down your entire plan. Counties often limit livestock numbers, additional structures, RV living, utility hookups, or even certain types of gardens. Most investors check this using county zoning maps, tax assessor notes, and the planning department's written guidelines. It's a simple check most buyers skip, and it costs them later. According to recent rural development reports, zoning conflicts are one of the top sources of homestead project delays. I've seen people buy beautiful 20-acre parcels only to discover they can't legally keep chickens or build a barn. Start by calling the county planning office and asking for the specific zoning classification. Request a copy of the zoning ordinance that applies to that classification. Don't rely on verbal summaries, get the document, cross-reference what you want to do with what's explicitly allowed. Pay attention to setback requirements, height restrictions, and conditional use permits. Good investors think in systems. If you can't legally do what you want, nothing else matters. The county office usually has this information available online or through a simple phone call. Take 30 minutes to verify what's allowed before you fall in love with a property. Some areas also have homeowners association rules or deed restrictions that go beyond county zoning. Request copies of any HOA bylaws or deed restrictions before making an offer. These documents sometimes prohibit activities that county zoning allows. Next, we'll look at the resource that decides whether your land is livable year-round. Check water reliability. Water is the backbone of every homestead, and it's one of the easiest places to make an expensive mistake. I always verify well depth, output, seasonal changes, and, when applicable, actual recorded water rights. A property with a weak or unreliable supply will drain your time and budget fast. Most people check well logs, county databases, and previous pump test results. A good well should show stable output depending on the region, often somewhere between 5 to 12 gallons per minute, though it varies widely. I've learned to ask for documentation showing summer and winter flow rates, because seasonal variation can be dramatic. Well logs tell you the depth, static water level, and recovery rate after pumping. Static water level shows how far down the water sits when the well isn't being used. Recovery rate tells you how quickly the well refills after you've drawn water out. Both numbers matter for long-term reliability. Ignoring this step can distort your expected return on investment, because a property that needs a deeper well or water hauling becomes far more expensive to operate. In some areas, drilling a new well can cost anywhere from $8,000 to $25,000. That changes your math completely. Water rights add another layer of complexity in many Western states. Surface water rights, groundwater rights, and well permits are separate legal issues. Some properties have grandfathered water rights that are extremely valuable, while others might have restrictions on new wells or limitations on usage. When you take the time to verify water up front, risk becomes measurable, not mysterious. The county health department often keeps records of local well performance, and neighboring property owners are usually willing to share their experience if you ask politely. From here, let's talk about the ground itself, because what the soil can't support, you'll have to pay to fix. Assess soil and drainage. I typically walk the entire property to see how soil behaves in real conditions. Poor drainage, heavy clay, or zones that stay saturated can limit what you can grow, where you can build, or even how animals move across the land. This isn't about perfection, it's about understanding what you're working with. Investors usually check NRCS soil maps, local agricultural extensions, and past land use data to confirm what's realistic. Well-drained loam tends to perform consistently, while north-facing slopes often struggle with winter sun, and west-facing slopes can get intense summer heat. I always bring a simple soil auger to check drainage in key spots. The NRCS Web Soil Survey is a free online tool that provides detailed soil information for any property. It shows soil types, drainage characteristics, seasonal water tables, and suitability for different uses, including septic systems and building foundations. Not understanding sun exposure and slope can impact your energy costs and crop performance. A property that looks flat from the road might have subtle drainage issues that only show up during heavy rain. I've seen people spend thousands on French drains and soil amendments because they didn't check this up front. Soil pH, organic matter content, and nutrient levels affect what you can grow and how much you'll need to spend on fertilizers. Local extension offices often provide soil testing services for a small fee. These tests reveal whether your soil is naturally suited for your intended use. The point is simple. Soil tells you the truth long before your budget does. Spend an afternoon walking the land in different weather conditions if possible. Look for standing water, erosion patterns, and where vegetation grows best naturally. Next, we'll shift to something most buyers underestimate: how you physically get in and out. Study access and road conditions. I always check whether a property sits in that sweet spot, close enough to essential services, but far enough out for privacy and affordability. There's a fringe zone where land stays affordable but still practical, usually 15 to 45 minutes from food, fuel, and medical services, depending on your region. Investors look at county-maintained road maps, winter access reports, and local traffic data. Rural roads can be deceptive. A smooth summer drive can turn into deep mud or impassable snow conditions in other seasons. I make it a point to visit properties during different weather conditions when possible. Road maintenance responsibility makes a huge difference in your long-term costs. County-maintained roads usually get regular grading, snow removal, and repairs at no direct cost to you. Private roads shared by multiple property owners require agreements about maintenance costs and responsibilities. Emergency access matters more than most people consider initially. Can an ambulance reach your property year-round? What about fire trucks or propane delivery? Some rural roads have seasonal weight restrictions or steep grades that affect emergency services and delivery options. Buying too far stretches your time and money. Buying too close often destroys the privacy people are actually paying for. I've worked with clients who thought they wanted total isolation, then realized they were spending 3 hours a day just running basic errands. That gets old fast. Smart investors view access as long-term efficiency, not convenience. Check if the road is county-maintained or private. Find out about snow removal, seasonal weight limits, and any easement restrictions. A property might look perfect until you discover the access road becomes impassable for months each year. After this, we'll look at the hidden cost most people feel only after moving in. Calculate true setup costs. Now here's the thing. The purchase price is just the beginning. I always make a list of everything the land will require in year one: fencing, utilities, driveway work, tree planting, soil improvement, and basic equipment. Depending on your area, first-year setup often runs an additional 15 to 40% of the purchase price. Most investors verify costs by getting rough quotes from local contractors, reviewing farm supply pricing, and comparing similar homestead setups. Bare land with no trees sounds simple, but growing shade or windbreaks can take 10 to 20 years depending on the climate. Meanwhile, you might need immediate solutions for wind protection, privacy screening, or livestock shelter. Fencing costs vary dramatically based on purpose and materials. Basic field fencing might run $3 to $5 per linear foot, while privacy fencing can reach $8 to $15 per linear foot. The perimeter of a 20-acre square property requires over 3,000 feet of fencing. Utility connections often cost more than buyers expect. Electrical service might require transformer upgrades, new poles, or underground installation, depending on distance and local requirements. Well, drilling and septic installation are major expenses that vary widely based on soil conditions and local regulations. When you know these costs up front, you avoid overcommitting before the property's ready. I've seen people buy land for $50,000, then discover they need another $30,000 just to make it functional. This isn't necessarily a problem if you budget for it, but it becomes a crisis if it surprises you. Good investors don't fear costs. They plan for them. Create a spreadsheet with realistic estimates for everything you'll need. Include things like a tractor, tools, storage buildings, and utility connections. The numbers might surprise you, but surprises are better discovered before you buy. Next, we'll look at power, one of the biggest variables in rural living. Confirm power options. Early electricity changes everything about homestead budgeting. I always confirm grid distance and connection fees before I even consider making an offer. Depending on your region, running new power lines can cost anywhere from a few thousand to well over $20,000. The utility company can give you exact estimates based on distance and terrain. Power companies typically provide service to the property line for free up to a certain distance, often around 300 to 500 feet from existing lines. Beyond that distance, you pay the full cost of poles, transformers, and installation. If you're going off-grid, you'll want to review the expected solar output, battery lifespan, and realistic generator use. According to most energy guides, off-grid systems require annual maintenance and gradual expansion as your needs grow. A basic solar setup might start around $15,000, but can easily reach $40,000 for full household power. A property with poor sun exposure or limited access routes can make both grid and off-grid options more expensive. I always check solar potential using online calculators and seasonal sun charts. South-facing exposure with minimal tree shading gives you the best options. Site conditions affect both options significantly. Rocky terrain, environmental restrictions, or underground installation needs can increase costs substantially. Limited road access makes equipment delivery and maintenance more difficult for both grid connections and off-grid installations. This is where careful planning turns unpredictability into manageable long-term setup. Don't assume anything about power availability, get written estimates, understand connection timelines, and factor these costs into your total investment before making an offer. Next, we'll move from utilities to something even more practical: the ecosystem around you. Evaluate local services. Every investor I know eventually realizes how much rural services matter. I check the distance to grocery stores, gas stations, hospitals, feed stores, and repair shops because these trips happen weekly, not occasionally. Rural living means planning ahead, but you still need reliable access to essentials. Most people use mapping tools, county service directories, and local forums to estimate realistic travel times. A property that looks remote on paper might be manageable, while one that appears close might be separated by poor roads or seasonal closures. I always drive the routes during different times of day. Internet and cell phone coverage have become essential infrastructure for most rural residents, especially those working from home. Satellite internet has improved significantly, but is still more expensive than urban broadband. Cell coverage can be spotty, affecting both communication and mobile internet access. Medical services deserve special attention, particularly emergency response times and hospital access. Rural areas often have volunteer fire departments and longer ambulance response times. The nearest hospital might be 30 minutes or more away, and specialized medical services could require travel to larger cities. Ignoring this factor creates burnout, and burnout is expensive. I've worked with clients who loved their land but hated the 2-hour round trip for basic supplies. That frustration eventually led them to sell at a loss and move closer to town. Good investors factor lifestyle into return on investment because both determine the long-term value of a property. Consider how your needs might change over time. Young families might prioritize school districts, while older buyers might focus more on medical access. From here, let's break down the human side of homesteading: your neighbors. Research neighbor activity. I take time to study surrounding land use because neighbors influence land value more than people realize. Hunting zones, weekend shooting, livestock operations, and heavy farm equipment can all change your day-to-day experience. It's not about judging these activities, it's about knowing what you're signing up for. Investors typically review county land use maps, satellite images, local listings, and sometimes visit at different times of day. A peaceful mid-morning check can hide noisy weekend activity. I've learned to visit properties on Saturday mornings and weekday evenings to get a fuller picture. Agricultural operations create both opportunities and challenges. A working cattle ranch next door might mean occasional noise and odors, but it also probably means your neighbor won't subdivide their land anytime soon. That agricultural use provides valuable stability and often protects rural character. Drive through the area and introduce yourself to neighbors when possible. Most rural people are friendly and willing to share information about local conditions, seasonal challenges, and community dynamics. This conversation can reveal things no inspection will catch. The point is straightforward. You're not just buying land, you're buying into an environment. Taking time to understand this human landscape helps ensure your investment will provide the lifestyle you're actually seeking. Next, let's talk about money. Specifically, the part most homestead investors overlook. Plan for income stability. Every homestead needs a financial backbone. I always map out how income will flow before buying, whether it's remote work, rental potential, agricultural output, or something else. Rural living often involves higher upfront costs and different ongoing expenses, making income stability critical. Remote work has become increasingly viable for rural residents, but it requires attention to internet reliability, cell coverage, and backup communication options. Many rural internet options have data caps or weather-related outages that can affect professional work. Test speeds and reliability thoroughly. Rental income potential varies widely in rural areas. Some properties near recreational areas can generate significant rental income through vacation rentals. Others in remote areas might have limited demand. Research comparable properties, occupancy rates, and local regulations before counting on this income. Agricultural income typically requires significant startup capital and several years to become profitable. Most small-scale farming operations struggle to generate substantial net income after accounting for equipment costs and market volatility. Don't count on farming income to cover mortgage payments unless you have extensive experience. Investors often review local economic trends and market data for their target area. According to many rural real estate studies, liquidity, or the ability to sell quickly, determines long-term financial health. A property with no reasonable exit strategy is a poor investment. When you understand the income side clearly, uncertainty becomes manageable. Consider multiple revenue streams rather than depending on a single source. Have cash reserves for unexpected expenses and potential economic downturns. Rural areas can be less forgiving of financial mistakes. Next, we'll discuss an approach that protects first-time rural buyers from costly mistakes. Start with a manageable scope. I never buy the first property I see. I walk at least 10 to 12 options before making a decision. It helps you understand pricing, land features, and what good value actually looks like. This education is worth more than any single property you might miss while learning. Most people compare listings on rural sites, drive through target regions, and take notes. It's a simple discipline that leads to better decisions. I keep a spreadsheet tracking acreage, water sources, access quality, and asking prices to spot patterns and opportunities. Property size matters more than most first-time buyers realize. A well-managed 5-acre homestead teaches you more than 40 acres that overwhelm your resources. Many successful homesteaders start with smaller properties, develop their skills, then expand once they understand their actual needs. Homesteading rewards patience. And patience keeps you from buying the wrong property too fast. I've seen people get excited about the first place they visit and skip the research phase entirely. That enthusiasm usually costs them thousands in avoidable mistakes. The learning process itself becomes valuable regardless of which property you eventually choose. Understanding local markets, regulations, and conditions protects you in negotiations and helps you make better long-term decisions. And now, let's bring in something most buyers don't notice until after the first winter. Review climate data. Climate is one of the most underrated investment factors. I check frost dates, rainfall averages, wind patterns, and sun angles. North-facing slopes tend to stay cold in winter, while west-facing slopes become intensely hot in summer. These microclimates affect heating costs, growing seasons, and overall comfort. Investors review Weather Service climate data, local extension office reports, and historical weather charts. These details determine heating needs, crop planning, and passive solar gains. I always look at 30-year averages rather than recent conditions to understand long-term patterns. Frost dates and growing season length directly affect gardening success and agricultural potential. A property in a frost pocket might have 50 fewer growing days than a location just a few hundred feet higher in elevation. This difference affects everything from food production to landscape planning. Understanding prevailing wind directions helps with building placement, tree planting for windbreaks, and energy efficiency planning. Structures positioned to take advantage of cooling summer breezes while blocking cold winter winds can significantly reduce heating and cooling costs. Talk to longtime local residents about climate patterns and seasonal challenges. They often know details about storm tracks, wind patterns, and microclimate variations that don't appear in official data but affect daily life significantly. Understanding local climate turns challenges into predictable operating conditions rather than expensive surprises. Finally, let's cover the step that ties all the others together. Get a good inspection. Before making any offer final, I bring in a rural experienced inspector, someone who knows wells, septic systems, foundation age, and land behavior. Rural properties often hide structural issues that suburban inspectors aren't trained to catch. A qualified rural inspector should evaluate water systems including well components, pressure tanks, and distribution lines. They should understand septic system design, leach field conditions, and pumping requirements. Many rural properties have older electrical systems, propane appliances, and wood-burning equipment that require specific expertise. Investors typically request well logs, septic reports, soil tests, and roof evaluations. Look for an inspector who understands older buildings, agricultural structures, and rural utility systems. They should check water pressure, electrical capacity, and structural integrity with rural conditions in mind. Building inspections should include outbuildings, fencing, drainage systems, and any agricultural infrastructure. Even if you don't plan to use these facilities immediately, their condition affects property value and potential future uses. A thorough inspection protects your cash, your time, and your long-term stability. I've seen people discover major foundation problems, failing septic systems, or contaminated wells only after closing. These repairs can cost more than the original purchase price. Good rural inspectors often provide valuable insights beyond formal requirements. They might know local contractors, understand regional construction challenges, or offer practical advice about maintenance based on their experience with similar properties. Good investors don't just trust the land, they verify it. Include contingencies in your purchase agreement that allow you to walk away if inspections reveal deal-breaking problems. Better to lose an earnest money deposit than inherit expensive problems you can't afford to fix. The strongest portfolios aren't built in excitement, they're built in confirmation. Every number, every note, every conversation builds toward understanding what you're truly buying. Not just land, but a complete lifestyle and investment opportunity that will reward preparation and punish assumptions for years to come.